Hello, everyone. I'm Grant Cohn, joined by Sybilla Bakzaza. I'm back from vacation. I spent the last 5 days in San Diego. Wonderful place. Hometown of Fred Warner, who just signed a 5-year extension with the 49ers, going to be on this team through 2026 at least, unless they cut him. But I don't think who knows? Anyway, great day for Fred Warner. Great day to talk about him. We have a lot more to talk about other than Warner. But first, we wanted to give our instant reaction to this news. I just want to say beforehand, I was dreading that they would do this during my vacation. It seemed like they probably would. I asked nicely beforehand that they wouldn't, and they didn't. So thank you for
I saw your tweets. So they were very sweet towards you.
So nice.
Very, very considerate.
Considerate, yeah. So anyway, What do you think?
Welcome back. Glad to hear your vacation went well. I'd be tanning in San Diego. I love San Diego.
It was really nice. I've never spent much time in San Diego. I loved it. It was really nice.
I got offered a job with Petco Corporate when I was like 19 there, but I went in the Navy instead. But like the weather, it's a great place.
It was quite nice.
Of course, the Navy
quite
takes
nice.
you back, but still.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, Fred Warner. Let's talk
Fred Warner. First off, yes, it's a good day for the 49ers franchise. I saw that this morning. It was something I expected, hoped for. Obviously, there's some dread, but I'm glad they got that done. I like the emotional side of this, that Fred is now getting more per annum than any other linebacker in the league, averaging $19 million over Bobby Wagner, who I think is the market setter before him, and he's second only to C.J. Mosley with guarantees. So it's about $14.5 million, I think, and C.J. Mosley is like 50, 51, something like that over there for them. But yeah, I really like that. That's a centerpiece to the defense. He's definitely a foundational piece that they will continue to build around. He's team captain, I feel, of the defense. So This is good. They had to do it, and they had to do it now. No locker room distraction from this. Get it done before it drags out. And I think I'm expecting the 49ers have done something here to make it team-friendly. Have you seen the details of the contract?
I have not, but I think Wagner's was a 3-year deal. Warner's is a 5-year deal. So I'm expecting it's going to be, backloaded, pushed back, which will be team-friendly.
2026, correct?
Yes.
I mean, we're about to get the best part of his career, so that's important. He wanted to be a 49er for life. He's at least a 49er for the heart of his career.
That's a great point. He hasn't reached his prime yet. He's 24 years old. This is kind of the thing that I felt with Buckner. Like, they let Buckner go when he was 25. He's actually just hitting his stride, his prime in Indianapolis right now. Should be here. He should be one of these guys who's in the 49ers Hall of Fame at the end of his career. Anyway, he's not going to be, but Warner will. As long as he doesn't get hurt, Warner should be one of the guys who's in the Ring of Honor and all these things. He's only 24 years old, but he's accomplished a lot, and he's improved every year he's been in the league. Never missed a game.
Absolutely, and I mean he's the best coverage off-ball linebacker in the NFL. I mean he's a great player. So this is something the 49ers had to do, especially after, like you said, losing Buckner. I think that plays into this. The cap space was there, but also because the fact they can't do this again. And he, like I said, he's someone they're going to have to build around, and he's really necessary, at least to the scheme that Salah was running. So the whole, I feel like with the whole wide nine that Kosarek brought to us, I feel like Fred Warner is very necessary as a coverage linebacker in that kind of scheme. So I think he's not only just the best, but I think he's really good with us. And I think that our defensive scheme caters to his talents, and we absolutely need him.
Yeah, and there's one more point. The fact that they got this done now, this was way different than the George Kittle situation, because Fred Warner, it almost was in his interest to wait. Now, it's dangerous to go to training camp and play without that extension because people get hurt in camp, especially on the Niners. But if he waited, now, for example, this is good news for Darius Leonard in Indianapolis, another inside linebacker who is up for an extension. And, if he signs tomorrow, we'll probably get more money than Fred Warner just got, because that's how it works in the NFL. One guy sets the market, then the next guy beats it.
And he does not deserve more than Bobby Wagner, but it's just whoever gets the latest contract tends to be the highest paid.
Exactly. And there's a reason why Darius Leonard's waiting. I'm sure he looked at this as good news today. I'm sure
absolutely.
He saw Fred Warner. He's like, yes, I'm going to get more than Fred Warner. Warner could have played that game too, but it seems like what's more important to him is to take ownership of this entire team. He was talking at the state of the franchise. Absolutely. I mean, there was never any question about is he playing hardball here? No, he's all in. All in.
And he did, and for the record, he deserves this contract. For whatever few days he has the glory of being the highest paid linebacker in the league, it should absolutely be Fred Warner or Bobby Wagner. And because of this being a more modern contract than Bobby Wagner's, it should be Fred Warner. So yeah, he deserved this contract, but I'm glad that his heart was here to stay. Another thing is Fred Warner also realizes this is a great situation for him. Yeah. And he will thrive here more than he was somewhere else. I strongly believe this because of his familiarity, his comfort with the fan base, the city, the team, everything.
Also, there's something about him, maybe I'm projecting, but it seems like he's a little bit of a throwback in the sense that modern athletes who are much younger than you and I don't seem to have any allegiance to teams. It's like, you know what? Exactly. I'm going to take my talents here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to play with my friends. I like going to Miami, or I want to be here. It's like, he's like, nah, I got drafted by the Niners. They made a commitment to me, and I'm going to make a commitment to this team, and I'm going to take ownership of this team. It's not just about my career. It's about this team's accomplishments, and I'm going to be at the forefront of that. I'm going to lead this. It's really cool to see it, because I mean,
absolutely, and that's something I used to miss about baseball in the early 90s, the 80s, the 70s. Is that teams with, of course, the players' unions and the contract issues, they do play into this, and they do sometimes get in the way of a player's desire to stay, like Jason Giambi with the Oakland Athletics. But in this particular case, in this modern economy of the NFL, he had to make a concerted effort to stay here. And that shows, and I'm really glad to see that. And this is somebody I think the fans should really get behind. I think some 54 jerseys should start selling like hotcakes, because this guy's going to be here, and he's demonstrated the loyalty that the fan base demonstrates to him.
Yeah, he wants to be here on the 49ers.
This is old school. I see what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Staley was like that. There are players like that, but it's rare. I mean, look, Niner fans love Nick Bosa, okay? Nothing against the Bosas in general, but those guys are mercenaries. Straight up. And that's how they do business, and there's nothing wrong with that, because the NFL will chew you up and spit you out. There's no loyalty on the team's end, really. It's nice to see a player like Fred Warner just step up and be the example. So you know
I wish we could get the older Bosa to come here, because that I think could keep us Nick Bosa as well, but that's going to be a pipe dream, unfortunately. But if we could get the brothers on the team, maybe towards like the tail end of his career, as Bosa's do for another extension or something, it would be pretty cool to have them both here. But you're right, unless it's of personal interest to them, they're not going, and monetary interest, they won't stay.
Yeah, I mean, so Nick Bosa was in Florida all offseason. Fred Warner was working out in OTAs without an extension, because that's his defense.
Fred Warner, he's an athlete. He's a football player. That's the thing. He's on this team. He's a 49er first. Then he's a linebacker.
It's not just that, it's his team, Sybil. That's what I love about it. It's like, no, I can't miss this OTA. It's my team.
He has a very Uncle Sherman approach as far as his ability to be serious and have fun. Whereas George Kittle, you need him in the locker room, but he's like the courtroom jester. I mean, he's not necessarily the leader that Fred Warner is. He's the wild card, and everybody loves him, and it's fun to have fun with him. He's the one that quarterbacks are going to hang out with. But Fred Warner is the studious one. He's the dynamic player. He's the full athletic football player. He's a businessman. He's a franchise player. He's an athlete. He's the most rounded football player I think we have on the team. Sometimes I think that's why he's so good.
It's the most mature player on the team too.
Ability. It's his intelligence as well.
Oh, it's his emotional maturity too. He's a natural leader.
It shows in the way he hits as well. Like he doesn't fight Bowman or Willis people. Not quite. I don't think he thumps quite like those, but he wraps them up Jimmy Ward style.
Yes, he does. His technique is terrific.
And everything like that. He's a very attention to detail kind of person. And that's why I want to see Dre Greenlaw develop into a more Bowman style hitter. I would love to see that. Have a Punisher and an eraser side by side.
Yeah, Greenlaw does have some velocity behind his hits. He's really quite good.
He has some thump. It's like an immovable object hitting a movable object when he hits people, like the goal line stop in Seattle. That's absolutely Greenlaw.
The main threat says Warner is by far the most important player on this defense, strongest leader as well. Quarterback of the defense, had to re-sign him. Yeah, yes. And if he costs $19 million, what's Bosa going to cost in 2 years? My God.
He's not, who knows? I say he won't go for Aaron Donald money, but if he stays healthy, what team wouldn't look at him in the future, at least upper echelon towards that direction of financial commitments? His contractual numbers might be pretty high if he strings together 2 or 3 healthy seasons. Also, the main threat, that is a great name. You should play
Great name. Shivnor says, it's so good. Shivnor says Fred's dedication to the Bay is not only admirable, but proves he's a player who deserves unwavering loyalty from the fans. Yeah, he is very dedicated to the Bay. He's from Oceanside, which is down by San Diego. And what I've noticed, I went to UCLA, and I always really got along with people from San Diego. although I felt like they were totally opposite for me in a lot of ways. I always felt like I got along with them. I don't know what it is. There's like a lack of pretentiousness of people from San Diego. Also, there's a very strong, they're very laid back, which is similar to Bay Area people. But what's different and I liked is there's a very big military influence in San Diego. And I don't know if
US Marine Corps, Miramar, you have the basic underwater demolition school there for special warfare is nearby. I mean, San Diego Bay, the Navy SEALs, they swim their final test in training around the bay. It's pretty cool.
And I don't know if he's a military brat or not, but he carries himself like he is. Like he's been raised around military. It's very serious.
Yeah, we call that military bearing is what we call that. His bearing is very good. It's interesting you should say that because it's his ability. He'll make eye contact and he'll get very serious and he'll look away and he'll straighten his shoulders when he talks. So he has a very court presence.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, yes. And I like that. I mean, it's all part of why he has,
and also his toughness. He's very cold and tough when he has to be. That's humility speaking, and that's what he has.
Yes.
And and if you notice, he's not so fired up in the locker room or on the sideline, but when he makes a stop, a forced fumble on the field, he goes animalistic. And that's a true man, a true athlete right there. He saves the talking and the fire for the hit after he gets the hit. And I love that about him. He's so awesome.
I like that.
Like a real martial artist or football player, they don't say anything until they've knocked the other guy out, and then they let it out. And that's Fred Warner. Love that.
That's a good call. He's very quiet in the locker room. You're right. He is quiet in the locker room.
And that's why tight ends should be terrified of him.
He's scary. He's very, very serious. As I'm more like Kittle and Kittle. I'm loud. I talk a lot. I'm not particularly intimidating. I'm not saying Kittle's not intimidating. But Fred Warner is terrifying. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. That's all we're going to say about Fred Warner. If you have other questions, if you want to continue the Warner discussion, feel free.
It was Steve Noor. That was a great comment you made. Thank you for that.
Yes. So I want to move on. I've been gone for the last 5 days. And what's cool is the Jimmy Ward interview I did has legs. And that one part in particular where he talked about Matthew Stafford just keeps going. And everyone's talked about it nationally. ESPN, NFL Network, Sports Illustrated, Bleacher Report, not to toot my own horn. But to me, they're getting the discussion wrong. Everyone's talking about, is Jimmy Ward right about Matthew Stafford? What I want to say is Jimmy Ward actually only said one thing about Matthew Stafford, that he's a top 10 quarterback in the league, maybe top 5. Everything else he said was question, posed in the form of a question. Was it really smart for them to move on from Jared Goff? Wasn't Jared Goff the guy who got him to the Super Bowl? How come Matthew Stafford hasn't been in the playoffs much? I just have questions. He's very smart. That's how he structured his statement. So when people say, was Jimmy Ward right about Matthew Stafford? Well, he didn't actually say anything about Matthew Stafford other than good player, have questions. The other thing that I want to say is that the most important thing that he said is not about Stafford. It's about Goff. Because what he said about Goff is, look, say what you want. He won a lot of games. Say what you want. He went to the playoffs with them a lot of times. And to me, that takes you inside the psyche of this locker room because the same exact words apply for Jimmy Garoppolo. And I guarantee that's not lost on Jimmy Ward. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we can roll this one back up further to the coaching staff as far as Shanahan and McVay. I do believe there are a lot of similarities to the aggressive style of play, the leadership qualities, the management skills. So looking at this through the lens of McVay and Shanahan, looking at this as if we're talking about Goff and Garoppolo. That's the parallel. Also, shout out to Jimmy Ward on that. That was the Socratic method he was using of putting forth his ideas in the form of questions. So you answer it. Very good.
It was very subtle. But it just seems to me like we've spent so much time, me and you, everyone on my channel, all Niner fans, dissecting, over-analyzing, and look, hey, Jimmy doesn't throw outside the numbers, and he doesn't throw deep, and he can't really move, and there's this limitation, and Trey Lance theoretically can do this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and I could just see Jimmy and a guy like Jaquiski Tartt, anyone who's been through the bad times here, anyone who knows what it's like to put in the effort and lose all the time, and how bad that feeling is, and to see Jimmy Garoppolo walk in the door and all of a sudden change it all of a sudden. Be like, you know what? Say what you want about Jimmy Garoppolo. He wins. So until I see that some other quarterback can have the same effect on this team, I'm riding with Jimmy. I feel like, look, if I should have just asked Jimmy Ward because he would have said it. But it just seemed like in retrospect, all the things he was saying about Jared Goff, like, hey, you can't knock this. You can't knock that. That all applies to Jimmy Garoppolo. And if the Niners are going to make this switch to Trey Lance, it just adds on another layer of pressure because, like, Trevor Lawrence doesn't have to win this year. Zach Wilson doesn't have to win. Trey Lance has to win as a rookie. Don't just play well, win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we had not gone through such dark times, those horrible seasons like with Chip Kelly and the like, it would be easier emotionally and strategically to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. But he basically delivered us from the dark times. We were in the dark ages of the franchise. It was really kind of one of the worst spells ever. And to basically say what's the linchpin, what's the cog that changed? It seems like Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, it's not. There were defensive players, free agents, a new scheme offensively. Players had to adjust to that offensive line and defensively, that sort of thing. So it's more people than just Garoppolo that saved the franchise. But it's really easy to point to him because they did rally behind him. That's true.
Absolutely. He was the one variable that really had a drastic effect.
He was the X factor. There's no doubt about that. But yes, there comes a point at which we improved. Now we have to improve again. So moving this back to the Goff, let's look at the parallels. Goff and Garoppolo, they have very similar coaches, offensive brain cases, young coaches, inheriting teams from coaching staffs that did not do such a good job, bringing in free agents, making trades and things like that. And both of them kind of game manager style. I mean, neither one of them really lights up my brain when it comes to like just raw athletic talents and everything, but they do seem like they can make some throws, and I do think they function well and healthy in this. From him. So we're moving on from Garoppolo. Is this not the same as the Rams moving on from Goff? And that's the boat I think that Ward is putting us in. And essentially, them bringing in Stafford over the top of Goff, he has questions. I think we all do. I think maybe some of those questions will be answered with good or bad performances by Stafford. We'll see. We'll see how well he does. We'll see how well the Niners defense does against him. But bottom line is I think there is a parallel to the way that Goff was jettisoned. And is this the writing on the wall for Garoppolo?
Yeah, absolutely. Domain Threat says, hey, what's up, Domain? He says, I get the remaining loyalties to Jimmy. Makes sense at this point. I give it 1 week of camp, and Trey will win them over as it should be. Fair. I just think it's important. This is my takeaway from Jimmy Ward's statement about Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. Focus on what he said about Goff, because that, I think, gives you a window into – it reminds you just how well liked Jimmy Garoppolo is in this locker room and in this fan base. The fans love Jimmy G. I think the players basically really like Jimmy G because he's a likable person, and they started winning when he got here. I mean, you could get really specific into the football details, but bottom line, Kyle was 1-10. Chip Kelly was 2-14. It was bad. And then Jimmy Garoppolo came here, and all of a sudden, everyone felt great about football again. So it's not to say that he won't get replaced. He's going to get replaced eventually, but got to be it's a very delicate situation.
Charismatic Jimmy G with the ladies, with the fan base, with everything. So it's really easy to like him. Domain, he makes a good point though.
Guys love his face as much as girls do.
Like Shannon Sharp actually brought this up. I know everyone knows I love him, so I just have to quote him on this. He said, if you want to get over your ex, you got to move on to the next one. And that's kind of like Domain is saying here, is that the threat that Domain brings up to Garoppolo is basically the romance, the rose-colored lenses. They come off as soon as we see that, hey, it's okay. If we dip our toes in the water with Lance, it's going to be okay. So, yeah, I think he's kind of right with that. I think if Trey Lance comes in and does pretty well, maybe even better, Garoppolo will be just, that guy that kind of saw us through the dark times.
Yeah. Hey,
and suddenly he's
no
a friend
of mine.
Franchise face.
He's a brother of mine, but we're athletes and we got to go with the best player. Sorry.
Nice.
Trey Niner says that QB's Jimmy and Goff situations could be more of a reflection of the head coaches and the quarterbacks. We will see with the Rams this year. One thing real quick, to me, like Goff and Jimmy are good. They're fine. It's just that they don't make other players better, and they need a good offensive line. So once you start paying them a ton of money, you're in trouble. But if you're not paying them much money, you can win. That's been demonstrated. And I think maybe don't sleep on Detroit. Jared Goff is good. He's cheap for them. They have an excellent offensive line. Don't sleep on Detroit. That's all I'm saying.
I'll sleep on the first game.
Yeah. Yes.
I like what Ray says here. Definitely, I'm not going to add much to that other than I think it could be a reflection of the head coaches. Absolutely. And if you could get these guys on your books for 15 to 20 million a year, you could build a defensive-minded, run-heavy team that could go to the Super Bowl, at least be perennial playoff contenders, because cap space is important to making a playoff run. And if you could get these guys above par quarterbacks to drop their price tag, you could make a good team.
Right. So remember,
I think the Niners could win with Garoppolo if they could restructure him for 15 to 20 million a year, because then you would have been able to keep people like Buckner.
Right. And they're unwilling to do so for, they have their reasons. They have their reasons, but they're unwilling to do so. It just, all of this ratchets up the pressure on Trey Lance, and the pressure really not on Trey Lance, on Kyle Shanahan. This is the biggest decision of his career.
Tell me what you think. But it seems like, and I like this, but it seems like the 49ers have established, if you come to us as a free agent and you get hurt, we'll pay you. Yes. We stand behind our athletes. We have good guarantees, even though we have great by Parag Marath, I think is his name. Yes. Really good at structuring contracts. But the Niners have been very loyal to their players. I'm not sure if that's playing into what they're doing with Jimmy or if it's a downright fear of making the jump to Trey Lance. And when you're in Lynch and Shanahan's shoes, you're deciding the future of the franchise. It's so easy for us to sit here and talk about it. We may even have it right. But to be the ones responsible, if it doesn't go right, game over. Career done.
Yeah.
Franchise sunk. I mean, these are huge things.
Domain's back. He says, excellent analogy from Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr in basketball. Kerr had to win them over with results. Yeah, Kerr had to win right away, and he did. Because, it's like, say what you want about Mark Jackson. His offense is terrible. He's capping this team. Okay, well, the next guy, he was winning 50 games a year, and this was the Warriors. They never won. So the replacement had to be better right away, and Steve Kerr was. Same thing goes for Trey Lance. You got to be better right away, because if you're not, then
he can't come in and just be a Band-Aid. He has to come in, and he also has to win in ways where he's using the abilities we keep talking about. He needs to light up the run game. He needs to bring excitement and diversity to the offense. Definitely, he needs to crush.
Let's look at it this way. If Jimmy Garoppolo beats out Trey Lance can be the backup on this team. I think the fan base will understand it. He's 21, give him some time. The locker room will understand it. But if Trey Lance beats out Jimmy and the Niners keep Jimmy as a backup, that to me could become a very explosive situation, because the fans love Jimmy. The players love Jimmy. And to keep him as a backup, I think a lot of people would look at that as an unnecessary slap in the face to a player who delivered the Niners out of dark times and was on a team that went to a Super Bowl. I don't think the Niners can keep Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup, is what I'm trying to say. Do you see where I'm coming from on this one?
This has so much precedence in business, the military, athletics, in every sphere of authority. You don't keep the former commander, you don't keep the former captain around too long. No. And especially in something that's not as structured as business or military, like a football team, there's high emotions, and rightfully so. On a team, to have him there is going to be a drag on because here's the thing. I'm not speaking for George Kittle, but let's say as an example, he's a Jimmy kind of guy. Now, he said some nice things about Lance. I think Kittle is prepared. I think he is. But you just don't know who's going to side with who. We have seen locker room splits in the San Francisco 49ers before. And just to have Jimmy around, do I believe at the personal level that Jimmy will actually do his job? Yes, I do. I do actually think he will demonstrate some very gritty humility. But as far as everyone else on the team, no, you can't keep this guy around, plain and simple. And it's just one of those things where every time Trey Lance slips and falls, people will be clamoring for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going to have a bad game. Someone like the Seahawks or the Rams are going to light him up in one game in his career at least. You can't have Jimmy Garoppolo around
You're absolutely right. And again, it's not just going to be from the fan base, although it will be from the fan base. It'll be from the locker room. I mean, exactly. Kyle Juszczyk came out today. I think he was on with I'm sorry. It was Ross Tucker. I'm sorry. It was one of these podcasts, and he goes on. He says, it's Jimmy Garoppolo's team until it isn't. It's Jimmy Garoppolo's team until he gets hurt. Look, that's how these guys have been with him for 4 years. They spent a lot of time with him. I mean, Trey Lance is like 10 years younger than a lot of these players. I get it. As long as they're both on the team, you're creating kind of a mixed messaging situation, and players are free to back who they want. So That's
Absolutely.
why I really feel like you can't let what happened in Philly last year happen to the Niners. I know it sounds crazy.
Yeah, we were talking about that before the show. Wentz and Jalen Hurts is just like, that's a tough one for Wentz. This is a guy who he watched his team go get the Super Bowl because he got injured. And now he has this young gunner coming in. He begins to falter. It's not good for the fan base. He actually started getting boos from the fan base. Do you remember that?
You split the fan base. He struggles, and then the fans are saying, well, let's give this second round pick a try. Why did we draft Jalen Hurts? Carson Wentz is struggling, put him on. I'm just saying, I don't even know if here's
we
what
don't want that drama.
The more that I think about it.
We don't need this media headline for one. In fact, we don't need Ziggy here and myself and Jack Hammer and all and Vish and the rest of the guys sitting here talking about this drama in the season. The team, because here's the thing, if we are focused on this now, the team is doubly focused on it in the locker room. So they have got to, this is something that Shanahan and Lynch have got to understand. They have got to monitor it, govern it, direct it, and silence it. And the best way to silence it is to take the elephant out of the room, which, if you're going to move on, is the guy that's Jimmy Garoppolo.
But the more I think about it, the more I just feel like these two guys can't be on the team together. There's an echo. I don't know what's happening. All of it's back. Okay. Okay. So what I'm saying is I don't think these two guys can be on the team together during the season because, as you said, let's say Trey Lance starts, Jimmy's the backup, Trey Lance struggles week 1 or week 2 and loses. The fan base and some of the team says, well, Jimmy would have won. Let's do the reverse. Let's say Jimmy's on the team and he starts week 1 against Detroit, okay? And Trey Lance looked good in preseason, but they go with Jimmy week 1 and he loses to Detroit. How many people in the locker room would say, well, we should have went with the kid. He's better. And how many people in the fan? I feel like one way or another, you got an unwinnable situation for the starter if the other guy's the backup. So it seems to me you pick one and you go with it. No, it seems to me that Jimmy Garoppolo can be on this team. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo can be on this team. I don't think he can.
Well, the most important issue here is the amount of static I'm going to take from that Detroit fan if we lose the first game.
Let's go back to the military analogy you used. It's like you had a commander, you brought in a new commander, and you know he's going to take over at some point.
I have actually been in this position.
Yes, you know he's going to take over at some point.
Yes.
But it could be this week, it could be next week, it could be 3 weeks from now. You've already undermined this guy's authority. So what are you waiting for?
Yes.
What are you waiting for?
Yeah, and here's the thing. The exact. By the way, shout out to my chief, the BM, who comments on. He's a big fan of you. He did, I think, 21 years in the Navy. We were talking about this the other day, and my first commanding officer, I will not name names. Suffice it to say, I actually got along with him. He was sent off to Guam for some acts of brutality under his command in my battalion. We were mixed Marine and Navy, and while he was still there, and the change of command proceedings were underway, there was divisive split. There was yelling, there was punking, there was shoving, there was someone took a swing at someone because we were not thriving out of seeing the old guard replaced by the new guard. And the new one came from, he was the commanding officer of a military prison, that's all I'm going to say. Just a kind of a interesting fellow, little guy with glasses and did this with his hands a lot.
Wow.
We used to have this tall and dashing.
Those are the scariest people.
Yeah, he was a naval aviator, and he was a World War II kind of like get you fired up. The differences in personalities between Garoppolo and Lance are going to prohibit them from leading the team at the same time. That's my point. So it doesn't matter if they like one or the other. You can't have two commanders. It doesn't work. You can't have two. You don't, as just a 9 to 5 person clocking in, going to the office, you don't want two managers saying, did you get this done? Did you get this done? You get tired of having two directions. You want one direction and you want to go with it. Doesn't matter how much of a leader or a follower you are, wherever you fall into the chain of command, you just want direction and you want solidarity. There's a big emotion on a football team. You know, we can sit here as fans, analysts, and we can say, just do your job. It's not that simple. They have to be managed and directed, and their emotions have to be taken into consideration. That's part of leadership. That's part of team play.
Yeah, I just feel like if you have, again, there's the echo. Turn it down. If you have Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance on the team together this year, you're running. I think we've undersold the risk of this team being split, the locker room being split. Having both of these guys on the team, it could happen in so many different ways. So what I think we're saying is they got to move Jimmy Garoppolo. They have to. They have to. And it's not for financial reasons. We're not talking about the cap and how much money he costs. We're talking about the dynamics of a team.
And here's the thing: pick a direction and do it the best you can do it.
Yeah.
Just pick a direction and go with it. Don't do two jobs at once. Just pick one direction, one leader, and do that to the best of your ability. And that's where the leadership of Shanahan and Lynch, they should clearly define the direction to the team. I don't know if they have with behind closed doors. I don't know if the 49ers players know something we don't, potentially. But they need to define this and define it soon.
Yeah,
because preparation for a season is like preparation for a mission. The more time, the better.
Yeah, and again, look at Philly for what can happen. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. Things started getting a little bit bad, and he drafts a quarterback and plays both of them. Both of them struggle. They have a bad season, gets fired. Let's say the Niners have a similar season where Jimmy Garoppolo starts, struggles, gets benched. Trey Lance comes in, struggles. The team wins 6 games. The fan base is mad. There's not all this optimism and hope for the future because both quarterbacks struggled. All of a sudden, you're looking at like, what do we have here? You don't want that to happen. This is very delicate. It seems to me that basically what the best way, the course of action here is when it's time for Lance to take over, what you do is you trade Jimmy and say we're doing this out of respect for Jimmy.
Yeah,
we like
because
Jimmy.
He needs to move on before the quarterback market gets reset and more draft picks come out of college.
Yes.
Because
we don't want to punish Jimmy. We don't want to embarrass Jimmy. We don't want him standing on the bench. We love Jimmy, and we want him to be a starter somewhere else. So out of respect to him, like they did with Navarro Bowman, we're going to let him go. And I think that would play well with the fan base and with the locker room.
And here's the thing. If you need a balm for the wound, the San Francisco 49ers have done this once before, although not premeditatively, but going from Smith to Kaepernick.
Yes.
And they went to the Super Bowl. So
they having Alex Smith on the bench that season in 2012 was humiliating for him. I remember it. I lived through it. He took it like a pro, and they didn't make him do it the next year. They could have kept him.
I foresee that Garoppolo would do that as well. But here's the thing. I think that the Niners today are more personnel-oriented than they were back then. I think someone like John Lynch is going to look Garoppolo in the eye and say, look, man, we love you. You helped save this franchise. They're going to tell him, you took us to a Super Bowl, and now we owe you something.
Yes.
And what we owe you is the opportunity to go somewhere else and thrive. And,
exactly.
I still think he's better than a lot of the quarterbacks out there. I think he would be a good fit in a couple of other places, and he needs to go on with his career. Sitting on the bench is not accomplishing anything for him except more question marks.
Yeah, and remember, the Niners could have kept Alex Smith in 2013 as a super backup for Colin Kaepernick, who hadn't proven much. He'd started 10 games in the NFL, but they didn't do that because it would have been infuriating for Alex Smith. It would have created bad blood, and they didn't want to do that to him. They wanted to have a good relationship. I don't know if they accomplished that, but out of respect, they let him go.
Rings in his career. Amazing guy.
Domain says if Trey beats out Jimmy gets traded before week 1 for the sake of himself and the team. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Domain is on top of a lot of things. He knows his sports.
Would you just turn me down one more? The echo just won't go away. I don't know what's going on. Trey Niner says,
let's just plug in the headphones and be.
That's usually the best way to go. Trey Niner says the only way to keep Jimmy is as the starter. Allow him to fail or get injured, and then it's an easy replacement. No harm, no foul. Winning cures everything. Yeah, but what if he never gets hurt? What if he never fails? What if he keeps chugging along? Eventually, you got to make the transition to the kid. I mean, eventually, you got to do something uncomfortable, right? I mean, that's a tough one to me. It seems like what people are saying is this is Jimmy Garoppolo's team until he gives it up.
Well, I think that Trey's playing it safe, and I think that was the narrative to begin with. Trey, there's nothing wrong with that. I definitely see your points. I think that in a perfect world, your theory is absolutely perfect. I think that the upside, the team chemistry, the projection of what Trey Lance could do for unlocking Kyle Shanahan. I think Kyle Shanahan is basically his abilities and his play calling are toned down. They're watered down because he's having to put a Band-Aid on Garoppolo. He can do it, he can mask it, but we're talking about unleashing the racehorse and just letting them run. So definitely in a perfect world, what you say is true, and I don't think it's particularly wrong, but the upside of Trey Lance is superior, and we have to move on eventually.
Right, and I think the Niner fans are like used to, the Colin Kaepernick situation where he sat a year, or the Steve Young situation where he sat a long time. But
Well, that's typical, classical of the NFL. That's an old school mentality. I think with the schemes being run in college, I think with the athletics, the nutrition, the exposure to tape that we have today, I think that there's an opportunity for intelligent young quarterbacks to be more NFL ready than in the past. I definitely think so.
Also, Colin Kaepernick was a second-round pick. Steve Young was signed after he was. They traded for Steve Young. They traded for Steve Young. So it was not the same level of investment as trading 3 first-round picks and a third to move up to number 3. I mean, you just don't sit those players. Third pick in the draft. It's like trading it for Nick Bosa and being like, we're just not going to use him this year. No, he was the 3rd pick in the draft. You're using him. So even Mahomes, 10th pick, not exactly the same thing. He's in a situation where it's not a question of like, well, it could be Jimmy's team or it could be Trey's team. Like, no. This is Trey's team. It is because of what they gave up to get him. If they'd stuck at 12 and drafted Mac Jones, you can make an argument that it could still be Jimmy's team.
I wouldn't want Mac Jones taking over this team over Jimmy. Absolutely not.
No, they're too similar. Okay.
Exactly.
So what I want to say, let me move on, take this off. Okay, so this is my thought process of the things I was thinking about when I was on vacation. So, okay, if Jimmy Garoppolo really can't stand this team as a backup, if it would be kind of a slap in the face to him and something that could potentially divide the locker room and the fan base, then that means that Josh Rosen's important. We've talked about him all offseason, but I want to come back to him because you can't get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. You have to keep Jimmy as the backup if Rosen sucks. And it seems to me that we'll learn about Rosen, but there are some good signs here. And the good sign is that they kept him and not Mullins and Beathard. They knew Mullins and Beathard. Mullins and Beathard got signed this offseason. Mullins got a contract with $200,000 guaranteed on Philly. What's his face? CJ got a contract with $350,000 guaranteed from Jacksonville. Those are NFL quarterbacks. The Niners had all 3 on the same team, and they were like, you know what? We like Rosen. So that's a good sign.
I do.
That's a good sign.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think Rosen has a lot of upside, and I think that's we could be in worse situations, and I think we're in a better situation than we were last year.
Absolutely. I think it's
across
very
the board, even excluding Trey Lance, we are in a better situation. I'd rather have Rosen for the mere upside than Beathard and Mullins. No slight against Mullins. That's the only one I'm going to defend. But it's just a matter of, I think Rosen is more interesting. He brings more possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I like Mullins too. Mullins a great story. He's an undrafted guy who is off the charts in other ways.
Grit. Exactly.
Yeah, he overcompensated for his lack of physical skill set, which is obvious because he's an undrafted free agent. Rosen was the 10th pick in the draft. Rosen is not lacking physically. I've watched him. I've seen him throw. He's in a lot of ways every bit as he can make you drop your jaw just as much as Trey Lance in terms of how they throw. The ball explodes off his hands. He's aggressive. He's fun to watch. And he's only 24 years old.
His arm has a little Josh Allen to it.
Oh, that's
as far as power.
Josh Allen has the strongest arm I've ever seen in my entire life, but he's right one underneath. I mean, it's
right.
Much stronger. Yeah. I mean, it's much stronger than Jimmy Garoppolo's. Any quarterback I've seen on the Niners since Kaepernick. I mean, really having Lance and Rosen on the team right now.
Broke a finger with his gunslinging abilities. Yeah.
And Lance has a cannon too, but so does Rosen. It's a lot of fun to watch both of them. So it seems to me that
the other thing is the practice squad and second team reps and things like that. I'd love to see that with Rosen. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like the Niners have 4 quarterbacks here.
It's just the practice squad quarterback. I mean, not useless, but if you get rid of Garoppolo, I'm more excited for how he can grow and bring more to the team and just develop. And maybe in the future you can flip him for some draft picks. The way the Garoppolo, you obviously flipping Garoppolo is perfect. But in the future, if you have a developmental kind of guy and you end up taking a quarterback in the 5th round, 4th round, or something like that, that is his replacement for the future. Or you pick up another developmental player like Rosen from another team in the future. First rounders, there are plenty of them washing around.
Yes, absolutely. So I do think they could get something for him down the line. But in the short term, what's interesting is I think people look at the 4 quarterbacks the Niners have and think who's the odd man out? Is it Rosen? I look at it as it's Jimmy. The reason they have 4 guys right now is because they're set up if and when Trey Lance wins the job. They have four guys there.
And the cost of Jimmy Garoppolo is just like that. That's part of what makes him the odd man out.
Agreed. Domain's back. I love Domain Thread. He says Rosen is a good one.
He is. He's the MVP of this show.
He's Domain Thread. Rosen has been my dark horse all along. Said this back in January. He has all the talent. His issues are communicative. Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. His issues are the fact that
Domain Thread needs to call in sometime.
I don't think he. I saw with Dante Pettis. Dante Pettis didn't really fit in very well in an NFL locker room. Not that he's a bad guy. He seemed a little out of place. Yeah,
he's a college kid. He was perfect. Okay, so I did some growing up in Washington State. He's perfect for SeaTac. He's perfect for that area.
Yes,
laid back. Dyed hair, just having a good old time, not pretentious or anything, just kind of goofing off. And
as someone who went to UCLA, Rosen's perfect for Westwood. But I don't think that his personality was that universally. I don't think people disliked him, but he's a little odd. And then I think the thing that really goes is he's intellectually arrogant, like Aaron Rodgers. And it's like, dude, you haven't proven that. And if you mouth off or you're late to a meeting, he does stuff like that. He'll be late. He'll do stuff where the attitude is like, I don't need this, or I'm smarter than you. You do that to coaches, they will humble your ass so fast, dude. And
or worse, they will blacklist you.
Yeah, he'll blacklist you. So now he's on his fourth team. I don't know if he'll get a fifth team. I think he finally gets the situation he's in. And also, if he's intellectually arrogant, well, Kyle Shanahan's the one coach where you kind of have to give him respect and be like, look, maybe Jim Mora Jr. didn't have something that could stimulate me as a quarterback, but Kyle Shanahan does. So I need to shut the hell up and pay attention and appreciate this opportunity.
Is, I would have to say, the most cerebral coach in the NFL, for better and for worse.
So maybe this is what Rosen needs. It's the wake up call and the I don't know, like if you ever were in those AP classes in high school, the kid who was the smartest kid in the class, but also was getting C's because he refused to do his homework. And it was
most frustrating for a teacher. Right. Absolutely.
It's like, I'm smarter than you, teacher. I hate this class. I don't really like education. It comes so easily and naturally to me. I'm not stimulated by this at all. I don't want to do this. That could be a little bit of Rosen, because he was considered the number one quarterback in America from when he was 15 to when he was 21.
That's not good. I always believe you need to serve in hell first in your career. Right. You need to crawl your way back up from the bottom. And in the Navy, we have something called a Mustang officer, which was enlisted before officer, and they get that extra oomph in the respect because they know what it's like to serve and underneath command, and they know what it's like to have to do the menial jobs. Going through enlisted boot camp is annoying. It's not tough. It's annoying. That's what it is. And that's the thing with Rosen. He needs to humble himself. And first off, he should take a look at Fred Warner's contract and be like, this linebacker is getting paid more than me, and I'm a first-round quarterback. That's what happens when you don't make the cuts. And I think you're right. Now that he's on this team, and I think Shanahan, he's like Gandalf the Grey when it comes to his ability to have football acumen. And I think he's looking down at this hobbit-sized quarterback, and basically, this is your last journey. This is your last opportunity. If not, you're going to burn, plain and simple. And I think it's a good thing.
You're just going to be hanging out on like the golf course in Bellflower, wherever you're from, the rest of your life.
Probably as a caddy.
I got blackballed, man. I could have been great. No,
exactly.
He's a really good tennis player.
Is he really?
Do that. He was actually as good at tennis as he was at football. He could have been the next.
My
Andy
father,
Roddick.
He played at Cal. My father was on the tennis team at Cal.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Berkeley,
real quick before we move on, it says, Grant, tell your mod to stop blocking me, Don Burr, Detroit. I love the banter that goes on between Don Burr.
Hey, Don, how are you?
The resident Lions fan. I like it. I think the trash talk is cool. I think trash talk is fine. Let's make sure that it's not too personal and that it's not too vulgar, because there are kids here. But yeah, I think Don Burr should be allowed to talk trash in my comment section. Moderator, let him back. But Don, set a good example here, all right? Let's keep this within reason, because there are kids here. But I like
Don,
trash talking.
We're going to have ourselves a beer sometimes to celebrate the 49ers victory over Detroit.
Domain says Rosen is just like most smart kids. He gets bored easily. Kyle will stimulate his mind. If, and it's a big if, he shuts his mouth and buys in. Yeah, I feel
that's
it's
possible.
a good
Yes,
it's a good timing.
Possible.
Because Josh is on the way out, and now he's got the coach he's always needed. It should work. And I think also
behavioral issues with intelligent children definitely generally stem from a lack of stimulation and activity. And that's, we always say, when you get in trouble, when you have nothing to do and you're bored. Now, that translates to this situation as far as maybe now he's in the classroom with a true professor for what he feels anyways the first time. But that, to me, that doesn't excuse that Rosen was not humble in other situations. He should have been, but I think he needs a really autocratic leader like Kyle Shanahan, and who is, to kind of get him straight, hopefully.
All of a sudden, my thing got heckin' blurry. What's up with that? Am I blurry?
Yes.
Yeah, what is up with that? Hold on. That didn't fix it.
Back up.
Back up. Hold on. Just give me a second. Hold on. Just give me a second.
There you go. It's you're good.
Oh, all right, sweet.
Yeah, when you back up like that, it gets the lens to refocus.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, that kind of killed the conversation. But yeah, no, the last thing I wanted to add to this was it does seem like Kyle Shanahan is interested in him, which is also works in his favor. He's got three things working in his favor. He's interested in Kyle interested in him, and he's got the awakening of, I got to grow up right now. I got to be an adult about this right now. This is my last chance. So I think it could work out. Last thing I want to talk about with the quarterbacks is like, all right, so if Rosen is someone the Niners like, and Trey Lance is going to be their starter pretty soon, and Jimmy Garoppolo's probably going to be off this team sooner rather than later, just for the sake of locker room cohesion, then what is Nate Sudfeld doing here? Why is he on the team? I've been thinking, this one gets me, but I think I've got it. To me, the reason he's here, and I don't know if they'll put him on the practice squad or keep him on the team. If they get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo before the season starts, they can keep him on the team. But he's here for practice. The way I see it is he's here to run the scout team, because the scout team is like, you're trying to give specific looks for the defense. You're not really working on your game at all. And Rosen can do it, although
batting practice, to put it in baseball terms.
Yeah, you just don't want Trey Lance doing that. I don't know how much you want Rosen doing that. It seems like you want someone like a designated practice quarterback, and that's why he's here. That's what I see.
Do you feel that Sudfeld is good at executing simple schematic plays and just putting the ball on the receiver as far as practice goes? And basically he's kind of a low risk, doesn't make a lot of errors in practice guy. You don't have to put too much on him. And he just, obviously, I would say his work ethic has got to be decent, right?
Well, I haven't seen much of him. He's new. I'm just trying to think, like, how has he made it this far? He's almost 28 years old, but he's never really played in the NFL. And when he has played, he's had mixed results at best. So why is he in the NFL? He must be excellent in the meetings, good in practice. And I think the whole being able to run a scout team is kind of a specific skill set, because you're mimicking another quarterback. You're trying to give that your defense a good look at what they're facing that week. And that's, I don't know, maybe some guys are better at that than others. But
there are
like Brian Hoyer, I imagine, is good at that, you know?
Yeah, probably, but probably more expensive too.
Yes.
I think in a lot of athletics, you have a lot of people you don't see on the field that help make those players that are on the field better.
Right.
Especially if I'm preparing for a fight or something like that. Believe it or not, I do a lot of my warming up against heavyweight boxers, because who's really better at a 1-2 and a cross than a boxer? It's what they do. It's not what I'm going to see, but it's what they do. And it gets me warmed up in thinking in different terms, and they hit hard and everything like that. So I think Sudfeld is kind of like that guy. He has his duties. He does them well. He's not considered a great player or anything, but he's good for the practice squad. I think you're right. That's all he is, and I don't think it's really worth too much analysis.
Yeah, it's people wondering what jersey are you wearing. It's not a Sudfeld jersey, the number 7. Although he does have number 7, it's weird to see someone wear it that's not Colin Kaepernick. We're going to talk about Kaepernick in a second. It just seems to me like some people think, well, the Niners are going to get rid of Josh Rosen and keep Sudfeld. I don't know. Like Sudfeld, you say what you want about Josh Rosen, he's had more success on the field than Sudfeld. Like Rosen has started 16 games. Sudfeld started like 1, maybe. He's played in like a game and a half, and it didn't go so well. Right. So I think really he's from Modesto, and he's here because they gave him $250,000 and were like, look, I know you don't want to be a practice squad quarterback, but here's $250,000. You'll be close to your family. What do you say? I don't see them actually ever playing Nate Sudfeld. You can't put him in a game.
No. He's not. I mean, they will sign someone off the free agency to play before they will let him play.
I agree. So he is the designated scout team quarterback, and during training camp, before Trey Lance has won this job, when Garoppolo's here too, it's going to buy the 49ers reps for Trey Lance, because you never want him doing scout team work. That's a waste of his time. Nate, you handle that. We're going to take Trey Lance on the side field and we're going to do drills. We're going to work on whatever. But it buys Trey Lance extra reps doing stuff as opposed, so he doesn't have to do stuff that's a waste of his time. That's the.
I bet he fixes a mean pot of coffee as well.
That's true, and I bet
he's one of those office boys that just keeps himself there.
Okay, now it's time to talk about Colin Kaepernick, the other person who wore number 7 on the 49ers. This is topical because a UFC fighter recently spoke about this. Can you give the context?
Yes. Bottom line is, if you guys remember several years ago, Colin Kaepernick, whose jersey I'm wearing, I'm a big Colin Kaepernick fan, and it's why I want to speak correctively on this issue. Jorge Masdival is a UFC fighter, a pretty darn good one. He's from Cuba. He's a Cuban born native, and he had some retaliation for the fact that Colin Kaepernick was wearing a Fidel Castro shirt, if you guys remember that, along with the pig socks. And basically, Jorge came out and called him a coward because he did not appreciate Colin Kaepernick basically giving a positive view to Fidel Castro, who is a totalitarian military dictator. That's bottom line. He's oppressive, violent, and horrible to his people. Colin Kaepernick seemed to understand how that was taken negatively, and he responded, if you remember, and for those who don't, he basically said, I acknowledge that he did many evil things. I'm only talking about the good things he did. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I wanted to talk about real quickly. He was referring to the literacy rate in Cuba, which is one of the best, if not the highest in the world, and that they have free medical system, healthcare that is accessible to all, universally. And basically Kaepernick was saying, are these not good things that we want here? Well, the ugliness of what Kaepernick said, unfortunately, which he was not aware of, I'm going to say this, he has a really good heart. It's demonstrated by the relief he has provided internationally when he bought that airliner to provide refugee relief overseas. He is very active in social movements that I really identify with. I think that anyone would. And he really is a good guy. But in this particular case, he erred. Fidel Castro, the way he was able to develop his system of government was by building it on the backs of his people who are starving. They have no money. They are beaten for being dissidents. One of the women on my team, her name is Marcel Harris. She was no problem being mentioned here. Her grandfather was brutalized and killed by Fidel Castro's police force for being a dissident. This is how you build a perfect healthcare system. And literacy is there's the ugliness to the side of this dictatorship. I am from Tamazgha, which is Marruecos en español, Morocco in English, and we didn't have these issues with our people, but we were ruled by the French, a brutal colonial overlords. Yeah, they make good wine, but that's not what we talk about when we talk about the occupation. And Fidel Castro is not deserving of getting a silver lining. And that's the thing is, don't look for the silver lining. I mean, especially for someone who is so conscious about racial rights, which is so important in today's society. But some of the most famous writers, Jorge Perez, who is a Black Cuban activist, he served 17 years in prison for asking for racial equality under Fidel Castro. Mentioning race is imprisoned automatically. Because of your demographic, you cannot ask for human rights. Esteban Dominguez, who is a great Cuban writer, I highly recommend his works. He documents the institutionalized racism within the penal system, specifically targeting the Black population. So Colin, I love you. You're one of my favorite players in the history of the NFL. But this was a mistake, and I think Jorge Masdival deserves a conversation, maybe with Colin, a good one, an open forum, because you have to realize when it comes from third world countries like I'm from, like Cuba, like Morocco or Algeria, our sisters to the east. Yeah, we accomplished some really good things under our dictatorships, but you don't realize sometimes if you just do a little bit of basic research, you see the brutality of a police state. And there are a lot of dictators. I'm going to bluntly say this. As somebody who's Amazigh, I'm sensitive to these issues. You will not see me wearing a Saddam Hussein shirt. There's no silver lining to people like that. They're just bad. Fidel Castro is just bad. And I have never met a Cuban who has told me that he was great. And that's why there are so many refugees coming here. And he should have looked deeper.
One more thing about Colin Kaepernick before we move on.
One more takeaway from the Jimmy Ward interview that I thought was really interesting and kind of people glossed over. Someone asked Jimmy Ward, what's it like being the longest tenured player on the team? And he launched into it. He's like, well, I don't know if you remember what it was like, the culture on this team when I first got here, but it was awful. He says, first you had everyone retiring. Then you had all the, the Kaepernick stuff. And he's like, I don't want to get into that. And I know he had his reasons and I respect him, but the team was totally divided. And right. So, there was the fact that his political stance was divisive, but the thing he pointed to that was interesting that has nothing to do with Castro. He said the thing between Kaepernick and Alden Smith, people forget, but before the stuff with Kaepernick kneeling, there was the stuff with Kaepernick not taking, but, Nessa went out with Alden Smith first. And Alden Smith, I guess, still had feelings for her. When she started going around with Colin Kaepernick, his teammate, Alden Smith was very upset. I think he tried to there were fights in the locker room and there was a blow up outside. And Alden Smith got kicked off the team. And I think that's what was originally divisive. And it's what Jimmy Ward referenced. And I think from their perspective, there was a lot of Alden Smith support in that locker room because they saw him as the best player on the team and a future Hall of Famer. Absolutely. And they saw Colin Kaepernick as be the one kind of pushing him over.
Bad leadership on Kaepernick's part to involve these extracurricular politics, and romance has no place in the locker room. I'm sorry, it's a business, it's a football team, and if you're going to be the captain, be loyal to your men.
People forget about that, but that did happen.
Yeah, I will admit I forgot about that as well.
Yeah, that was like 4 or 5 years. That was like 6 years ago. I think that was the Tom Sula year. That was the Tom Sula year. I remember Torrey Smith came out after Alden Smith got cut, and he says, it's a real downer. One of the main reasons I signed here was because of Alden Smith. He is one of the best pass rushers I've ever seen. Has Hall of Fame talent. It's a real shame. We just lost our
I would flat out say it. Alden Smith should have been the best pass rusher in NFL history.
Yeah.
Should have been.
Yeah. All right, final topic. Real quick, someone just came in. Hold on, I want to pull this up. It's a funny comment, if I could find it. Anyway, I lost it. The dude said, I just tuned in 15 minutes ago, trying to hear some news about Fred Warner. Haven't heard anything. We talked about him for the first 10 minutes and moved on.
Watch the replay. Don't worry.
Watch the replay. If you have any questions, let us know. But this is how we want to start. We want to end talking about Marcel Harris. Last week, you did a scouting report on basically every member of the secondary except Marcel Harris. Someone pointed it out that we left him out. Yes,
and thanks for that point out. That was one of your fans brought that up and was like, hey, can you guys do a segment on Marcel Harris? And I was like, I've got you.
Yeah. So what do you see from Marcel Harris? Yes.
All right, so Marcel Harris, to me, he's from Florida. For those of you who don't know, he distinguished himself there, doing a little bit of special teams and doing some safety work as well. He's described, I absolutely, it jumps off the tape. He's a clean hitter, but he's a big hitter. He stunned some guys in college. He knocked one out cold. The Seminoles game, he knocked that guy out cold, the receiver, just boom, stunned him, knocked the ball out. It was reminiscent of the Pierre Thomas hit by Dante Whitner. It looked just like that. And I saw that game, actually, and I remember when we drafted him, I was like, oh, that could be like the new Whitner on this team. And that's really kind of his skill set, begins and ends there. Downhill thumper. He chooses a vector, basically a pathway to the ball, and he goes for it. He does not have good instincts for how to lead in his tackles. So he tends to overrun his lanes and uses his strength and athleticism to try to sickle cut his way back. So basically, if you have the guy here, he's going to hit. He takes a straight line at them, and if they begin to go away from him, he overshoots it and chases them from perpendicular or from behind. This is not a good angle to take to the ball. It's not the shortest line, and that's how people get by you, as well as you're not able to make a play on the ball quite the same way. So there's his weakness, I think, is in his basically he doesn't have a lot of range or lateral coverage. He's a very downhill kind of player, kind of like an off-the-ball linebacker.
Yeah, and they did play him at off-ball linebacker
in the Saints game, and he made a stop, remember?
Did. Yes.
Yeah, so I
really thought he was better at off-ball linebacker. I don't know if you saw that. I thought that was a better fit for him.
He's not a small guy. He's like, is he 215 or something?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not huge, but he's not small. And I mean, for a safety, if you bring 215 to 225 pounds, that's a lot of man moving at high speed. So that's the thing. He's really good at blocking alleys as well. So especially in the wide nine scheme that we are running, you're going to see the runner potentially get to the second level with a cleaner lane sometimes. And that's where just like in the Saints game, that's where he's really good, is moving like a chess piece. So he's good from coming out here, moving into the lane, boom, and stuffing it. And that's where I think he needs to be played. We talked about not converting safeties to linebacker. I think we should have him as a box safety linebacker kind of hybrid, perhaps. But we just drafted Hufanga. Very similar.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How would you compare them?
I compare them very similarly. I think Hufanga is probably better at taking angles. And I think that's something that could play into them playing him even more. Marcel Harris, he has schematic familiarity. So I think that plays into his retention on the team. He also has tremendous special teams value. But if you remember, I said Hufanga has great special teams value as well. I think Marcel Harris at this point is the more cerebral player. I decided to look deeper into him. A little bit of off-field stuff that he does as far as his workouts. And remember, that's really how I got started here, was talking about activation and deactivation, cooldown and warm-ups and workouts. Marcel Harris takes this very seriously. He goes to the gym and looks like he's not doing anything because he's stretching. He's doing motor, flexor, abductor exercises where he's doing the little things that I like to see a super athlete do. And so I think his longevity and health is not going to be in question. I think he can hang around in this league. But right now I see him as a special teams value, and maybe like, do you feel like he could do dime packages and things like that, dollar packages?
I do. But it seems to me that if in those dime packages, which is, one linebacker on the field, extra DBs for coverage, you want Jimmy Ward and Jaquaski Tart in coverage.
And Warner, obviously.
Yeah. And so you want really more like free safeties. That's where you'd want Tavarius Moore to be in the. See, with Marcel Harris, the way I look at it is he's good, but I think Hufanga is here to replace him. And Harris,
you know why? You know why I think that is? Because Marcel Harris has shown time and again that he overruns his assignments.
Yeah.
And he's a liability in vertical coverage. He is not good down deep. If you have any burners up the sideline,
no good.
I've seen him get burned a lot. And I would actually venture to say that if you have an average or really good receiver on the field, it favors them. That's not a good report.
So, I mean, he's a fourth-year player. He's entering his fourth year. He still hasn't really established a role or a position. Is he a strong safety? Is he an outside linebacker? He's working to show that what he is. He's really a special teams guy right now.
But the thing is, we have Hufanga. That's the thing.
That's what I'm saying. I think they probably drafted him.
This is like a small Trey Lance and Garoppolo kind of tester for us.
Yes.
I like Marcel Harris as a person. We need to see a lot from him this year to not say next year we should cut him in favor of Hufanga. If Hufanga is not a bust and he's okay and he's as good as Marcel Harris, the writing is on the wall. Cheaper, younger, more valuable, and there's more upside.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall. It seems like Marcel Harris has an opportunity this year on the 49ers to play and make some value for himself. But if he plays well, he'll probably sign somewhere else. And if he doesn't play well, he might be out of the league because the Niners already have his replacement.
And the thing I like about Marcel Harris is he's trying. He is trying. If you guys go look on YouTube, his extracurricular activities, his warm-ups, his workouts, he's trying. He's really trying hard to do his part to stay healthy and stay on this team.
Certainly. Good luck.
So I like that about him.
All right, before we move on, before the show ends, Camelot's Red and Gold says Kaepernick supporting Castro just as bad as Tyson supporting Mao. Both dictators that, even though did some good things, were mostly ruthless. Yeah, I see some people on Twitter supporting Joseph Stalin. And it's like, what?
Because he executed 40 million people? Is that good?
What?
No.
Or it'd be like saying, Hitler, he did some bad things, but, he really improved that economy over in Germany. They had some terrible hyperinflation. We were saying that before
the show. I mean, you can say Hitler created the best automotive roadway in the world, but he built them for his Koenigsegg Panzers. He built them for his tanks to do,
He really improved their economy too. I mean, their economy was in shambles after World War I.
You just don't look for the silver lining. Just don't. I mean, every government does, most of them do one thing correctly, or they bring more money or more economy, but at what cost? So Camelot, thank you for saying that. Thank you for having the courage to say that. Thanks for the donation, and absolutely agree. There's no silver lining with dictatorship.
Absolutely, and thank you for humoring us on our political talk today, because it means something to us. I don't know, as a Jew, when I hear people talk about like the silver linings of murderous dictators, I'm like, wait a second, I don't like where this conversation's going at all. So why don't we talk about that? Yeah, thank you.
And especially as a North African, I mean, my grandfather served in the wars against, and by the way, we fought Cuba. Fidel Castro sent 3,000 soldiers against us to fight, and he killed some of us. We won the skirmish, but they fought us in North Africa. That's Fidel Castro for you. So, and I want to close with one thing. I believe in Colin Kaepernick. I think he's a good guy. Not even talking about his performance as a quarterback. There's a reason I would wear his jersey after he just supported the guy who sent troops against my country. Because I just think he was misinformed. I think he's frustrated with the political landscape here. And he was grasping at straws for some kind of positive example.
Right.
And, and again, like you just said, Ziggy, it's just not worth it to look to these negative people for positive examples. We have a lot more positive examples here. I would have preferred to quote somebody like Tubbs or Rosa Parks or something like that. Let's go with a good person, not with these people.
Matt H says I skipped his question. I didn't see a question from Matt H. And I can scroll back unlimited. I have unlimited scrolling capabilities. I just don't see it. So sorry, Matt. I don't know. I don't see a question from you. Sorry, Matt.
If we miss a question in the future, why don't you put your question with that observation? That way we don't have to scroll.
Yeah. Anyway, before you end the show. Yeah, Matt, what was your question, Matt? Let me know. We're just going to sit here quietly for the next 20 seconds and wait for Matt to write his question.
I have a timer.
Let us know, Matt. It was a $2 question. Ask it again. Don't put any money. We'll answer it right now. Matt, go ahead. The thing with Kaepernick, I always got the feeling that Nessa knew her shit, and they would talk, and he would not know it as well as her, and he'd be in interviews. He would be.
Oh, absolutely. He was grasping at straws. Off the top of his head, someone said Cuba has the best medical healthcare system in the world. Actually, you know where I heard that in pop culture? I heard it in Die Another Day, James Bond.
Yes.
They brought that up there. This is kind of pop culture kind of knowledge that your Google experts have, basically. I think you're right. But that's why he backed up. That's why he's like, oh, no, I don't stand for the bad things. I'm just talking about the good things. Well, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so fair enough. I'm glad that we got the record straight there. Matt, here's his question. Do you think that the Niners will take the Taysom Hill and Breeze approach with Jimmy G and Lance? Again, you got to be careful. That's a good way to split the locker room right there.
That was, would you say we had a small dosage of that with the read options that Kaepernick would run under Alex Smith?
Yes.
Maybe that's what he's talking about. That's like, how can we get Trey Lance involved if Garoppolo is the guy? Now, Ziggy, do you think we shouldn't use him if Garoppolo's the guy?
I would like to use Lance I'd give him an entire series, not a play where he's a running back. Like you're the franchise quarterback soon. I don't need you playing like a running back until then. I'd give him a series that starts.
Snap count.
I'd give him a series or two a game, and if he does, start with one. If he does well with one, give him two. If he does well with two, make him the starting quarterback. So
in other words, each game is his to command.
If he's not ready to be the starting quarterback week one, I would give him a series in week one, an entire series. First down, second down, third down, and if he gets the first down, I'd let him keep going. I wouldn't have him start backed up against his own end zone, but give him one that starts around midfield. Give him a series.
Yeah, so
see what
I
happens.
would be more of the school of thought. Maybe give him two series, just because I've seen some really good quarterbacks go 3 and out on the first drive, and I also
by ear.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, don't give him one play. But I get what
you're saying. Yeah, you have to give him some kind of let
him play quarterback. Don't give him one play. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I would do.
Also mentally, emotionally, just the pressure. Actually, I always admired when Kaepernick executed on the read options. And I saw him pass once, actually, when he's basically said, hey, you got one snap, go do it. That's a lot of pressure. And it's like you have no momentum. You ever hear when the offense is rolling, you go hurry up offense, no huddle offense? It's because you've got the defense on the heels. Trey Lance needs that opportunity, I agree. And I think he's a quarterback perfectly tooled to get the defense on its heels because of the fact that he can really back them up with his speed and freeze them and things like that. Yeah, definitely more than a series. I'd say 2, but definitely at least 1.
Also, again, Taysom Hill was a mid-round pick. Colin Kaepernick was a second-round pick. They needed to prove that they were franchise quarterback material. And until they did, they were going to be using gadget ways. Trey Lance was the 3rd pick in the draft. He doesn't really have to prove anything. The expectation is that he is the franchise quarterback. So they need to be careful about using him as like a wildcat running back. They need to be careful.
Yeah, I think in the case of Taysom Hill and Drew Brees, if you're Sean Payton and you bench Brees for Taysom Hill, you will literally, the city of New Orleans will rebel. I mean, there's no logic. You can't back that up with the media. But in this particular case, I think it's more Shanahan should do it. And if it doesn't work, I think it's more Trey Lance's fault in the eyes of the fan base and the media.
Yeah.
I think there's less pressure on the coaching staff as far as the players they have to plug in. But there's so much franchise pressure on John Lynch.
Big time. All right. Well, our show went about 1:10 today. I liked it. It was nice to be back after a little vacation. I'm excited. Training camp starts a week from today. We'll have a lot to talk about. Sybil, thank you very much. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks for all the great questions, everyone.
Thank you, Matt H. Glad we got you. Take care. See you next week.